Hey, welcome in Guerrilla Sports Off Ice Tuesday afternoon here at the Guerrilla Sports Studios. Jesse Montano, you're going to be joined by Megan Angley in just a moment. Do want to remind you guys about our great friends over at Trusted American Mortgage. Trusted American salary-based mortgage consultants want to help you. Yes, you, the person watching this right now, get into a better interest rate and lower your monthly payment. Go to trustedamerican.com right now. See how much money they can help you start saving today. Hello and welcome in.
Please do not leave your luggage unattended on the station.
Welcome to the show. Hello. Welcome in Guerrilla Sports Off Ice Tuesday afternoon. Jesse Montano, Megan Angley, Chloe and Mark back there behind the glass today. Megan, woo! Show got pushed yesterday because I was involved in an earthquake.
Whoa.
No, that's not why the show got pushed, but I was flying back from Anaheim and I was in my first ever earthquake, Megan. But enough about me. How the F are you?
I'm good.
Good.
I can't compete with surviving an earthquake, but
Yes.
it was a good reset because this has been a crazy weekend. Coming out of it, I needed a little bit of a reset, and the Avs playing late on Sunday kind of made Monday and not having the show yesterday so welcome, but also gave us a chance to start our preview, start building for it today, and I feel more prepared today for our Dallas Avs preview than I did yesterday.
Well, and I appreciate you referring to me as a survivor because, yes, that is what I am. I did survive that earthquake, so thank you. It was a crazy weekend. Do want to shout out, we got a new member in the chat here, Alyssa, becoming a YouTube member for Guerrilla Sports.
Oh, Alyssa!
Joining many others, including
Welcome
Bagley.
officially.
Welcome officially. And this was my favorite tweet from the weekend. The Mighty Ducks. Yeah, you know what? I'm going with it. The Mighty Ducks tweeted out yesterday after the earthquake.
The Mighty Ducks.
Earthquack.
What is the name of the duck? I'm looking.
Wild Wing?
Wild Wing.
Yeah.
Did you see they lowered him into the arena and he was in like full goalie gear?
Yeah.
And it just reminded me of all the theories for Gabriel Landeskog's return to hockey. Like, if they could do this with Wild Wing, they can do this with Gabriel Landeskog.
They actually even, I'm going to send it to, I hope I saved it. They use little blimps.
Yeah, please watch your language.
I do. I have a 5-second clip of it that I'm going to send to you. It's a vertical video. It's terrible. This is terrible podcasting, but they have blimps that look like ducks.
That's adorable.
That fly around the, actually here, I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to do it myself. That fly around the arena. It is really adorable. But it happens at the beginning of the game while they're lowering Wild Wing down, and then they do it at various points throughout the game as well. So, yes, they could lower Gabe Landeskog down from the ceiling in full gear. Because Wild Wing he dresses like a goalie for the entire game.
Wow, that's a lot going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And his eyes glow orange now.
A
little spooky, but it's right. All right, here's a tiny video that's 5 seconds long. Don't blink or you're.
So you go over to them and be like, hey, are you prepared to miss the next 3 years?
See, they have little ducks that fly around.
Cute.
They are cute. Super cute. That's it. That's the end of my show.
No, I'm really glad you shared that.
Thank you.
I think Avs actually moved to having virtual parachute drops.
Yes.
And it makes me a little sad. I really like things actually falling from the sky. So it's good to see they don't move away from real blimps and even lean into it enough to have a duck-shaped one.
Megan, we have got a lot to unpack from this weekend. Maybe the busiest weekend that we've had this season for the Avs. And that certainly says something given the Mikko Rantanen deal, the goalie deals, everything that we've seen happen this year. A lot to unpack. It was a busy weekend. I'm with you. One of the highlights for me was the duck blimps. So I'm right there with you that it's good to see. But let's turn the clock all the way back to Friday here. I do just have to mention Devon Taves was just on Altitude Sports Radio. We're going to get into all of this. We're going to talk more about Gabe Landeskog and some of the quotes that we got over the weekend, as well as what we heard today at practice. But Devon Taves was asked by our good buddy D-Mac on the radio if Gabe Landeskog will be playing in Game 1. And Devon Taves said, you're going to have to tune in to find out.
Hasn't it been funny? None of the players have said anything definitive, but they've all said with some kind of certainty outside of Taves just now that he's expected back.
Well, and also I think we've also learned that Eric Johnson can't be overly trusted with a secret. He kind of spilled the beans a couple nights ago, and then he went on spitting chiclets and really spilled the beans. But
keep spilling the beans.
Keep it going. Who needs a bean keeper? You know what I mean? Like just spill them all over the place. But let's go back to Friday. Gabe Landeskog does make his return to professional hockey. Let's start with Friday. Doesn't contribute on the score sheet, but Megan, he jumped right back into it.
Yeah, he plays the full 60. They're putting him on power play PK nearly 15 minutes. That's intriguing, given he hadn't played hockey in nearly 3 years. And he jumped right in and played those kinds of minutes. You know, in a Jared Bednar lineup, we see third-line players come out of a night with numbers like that. Obviously, this is the American League, and we kind of talked about the context of this matchup with Henderson and Colorado Eagles. That's still pretty significant. And the other encouraging thing is how he seemed to ramp things up, start to finish. It was an improved showing for Landeskog. You know, his speed started to pick up by the end. He was more engaged in battles along the wall by the end. He was obviously intense in how he was involved, and that carried into night 2 as well. And so he wasn't shying away from contact. There wasn't this reluctance to his game, and it was really encouraging. He was playing with a lot of confidence.
He was, and you could see on his face even the nerves during warmups. You know, I was saying to you and Chloe that I imagine this has a little bit of like first NHL game type vibes for him, of just like the being out there, all the eyes on you again. Like he knows all the cameras are there for him. And I felt like you were just saying, not to completely repeat what you just said, but even after that first period, even after the first shift, okay.
Yes.
You got it out of the way. You know, not necessarily even from the injury standpoint, like, all right, you survived your first shift back. Now you can just go play. I was happy they had him in the starting lineup. He got the big pop from the crowd. And I just think all of that stuff played into it. And I now do think if and when he returns for the Avs, I think a lot of the nerves are going to be gone. He's just going to be able to play.
Yes. It reminds me of his post-game interview after Game 1, that he had to sort of recollect what it means to go through the motions of hockey again, down to being in the penalty box and taking warm-ups. You know, what's his routine? And I think that's a fair question, to need to settle back into some of those maybe mundane things that are so ordinary in hockey, that getting these 2 games under his belt, that adjustment is going to go a long way, having already started the process of it.
You did a fantastic on-ice interview with him after Friday night's game, Megan. And he talked about how he was feeling physically, things like that. And to your point, one of the funniest parts of it was, he got back out there for warmups and was having to like remind himself, like, wait, what did I do?
What was my routine again?
How do I normally go through this? Yeah. What's my routine? What do I do next? And I just thought it was like him saying that, I thought was just such a great reminder of like, you go through so much to get back. And there's stuff that we don't even think about that these guys have to go through. And you know, just getting back to your routine and how do you go through your progressions, getting ready for a game and all of that. So there's a lot of that able to get it out of the way. And I think the fact that he threw a big hit, got engaged physically, and then was also involved in, I'm going to say, a scary collision. It wasn't actually a scary collision, but for someone who's coming back after 3 years with a knee injury, there was an audible gasp in the crowd. he jumped right back up, collected his stick, jumped right back into the play. And there was even like some, okay, all right, nice. Getting all that stuff just out of the way, I think is going to make such a huge difference if he is to go on and make his return in the NHL.
Yeah, it was a several person pileup, and
Yep.
so people are understandably a little bit nervous about that. And then there's two other things that maybe don't jump off the page at you about night one, but definitely relate to night two, and that is in getting on special teams. It's important to note that the Eagles have top 10, top 5 special teams, both power play and penalty kill. The trust that he was given to get reps on what has been this strength of an Eagles group all year, I think is a reflection of where he's at in his hockey. Aaron Schneekloth even said this caliber of player, despite how much time he's missed, can help our power play and can help our PK. That's how good Gabriel Landeskog is. And so I want to emphasize that there's certainly rust that he's shaking off in getting back up to game speed, but the player coming out on the other side of this, even after 3 years of missing time, is still so elite and can separate from his peers at the AHL level almost immediately. And I think that's significant. And similarly, the leadership aspect of Landeskog.
Yep.
I don't need to remind everyone what an important leader and presence he is around the Avs, around the Eagles, but he was vocal around the team on night one. And I look at the state that the Eagles were in night two, where they were down 2 goals late into this game. And I just think about how the Landeskog effect helps them to come back in that game. And I'm not on the ice, so I can't specifically say it's because of his leadership. He was vocal and helped to guide them through these moments. But he gets a point on the goal that brings them within 1, and then he scores the power play goal that ties the game. It is the Landeskog effect, and that's another significant aspect of Landeskog that has not missed a step in his game.
Yeah. Megan, you're always one step ahead of me. Let's talk about night 2, because he does get on the score sheet. And you know, I don't even necessarily think that was even, a moment where they needed Gabe Landeskog's leadership, but it's no coincidence at all that he's the one in those moments, like you said, picks up I believe it was a secondary assist on the first goal.
By winning a battle along the boards.
Correct. And then having a puck off. I'm like, that to me is just one of those, not only is he such a great vocal leader, knows what to say, has his pulse on the group, but he's also a lead by example type guy. And that was just of course he comes up in that moment and says, hey, I'm going to not put the team on his back necessarily, but like, hey, I'm going to go get involved and I'm going to make a difference in this game. And how do you not follow that? And that's just what Gabe Landeskog's always been willing to do, whether it be through a big fight, through a hit, scoring a goal, whatever. He has always seemed to be someone who knows exactly what the team needs in a certain moment and finds a way to deliver. Evan and I were out at dinner when he scored the goal. And, he and I both looked at each other. We saw the puck go in and we both said, look, he can do that. Forget rust and all that stuff. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But like, Gabe Landeskog can do that. He can go to the front of the net and tip pucks highly effectively. So even if nothing else, he's going to give you another option there. But I think you're 100% right, Megan. Like, I like you said, I don't know if or what he was saying, but that was a Captain Landeskog moment there. The team down 3-1. I'm sure he had some words in the locker room. He wasn't like ripping guys, but like, hey, let's go out there and get this. EJ said to us in Anaheim on Sunday, we were already here. We figured we might as well try to go out and win. And I'd be willing to bet those are the little types of comments from Gabe Landeskog that just go a long way in a locker room like the American Hockey League, where it's like, hey, I'm up here. We're having fun. We're in this game. It's the last one at home. We might as well try to go out and win it. That just, those small little things that probably help take teams over the edge.
The way Schneekloth talked about the way Landeskog is vocal too is it's not just between periods. It's on the bench throughout the game. He provides context for the situation that they're in and what it means for them. And it gives them this source of motivation to galvanize the group. And I think Landeskog, just his story of perseverance is inspirational enough to get guys to want to run through a wall and battle alongside him. But I also think even outside of the inspirational story that is Landeskog, that context throughout the game from someone that is so mature and level-headed and has won before, I think you see the value of that. Because I even think about how there was a moment after a skirmish around the net where a Henderson player accidentally elbowed a ref in the head. And he got kicked out for doing this. But in between, he was obviously a little heated that he was being kicked out. Landeskog goes over and talks to him, and they appear to have a normal conversation. And I can only imagine that he's just imparting some kind of wisdom.
Yeah.
Like, you know what? You can't hit people in the head.
Yeah.
And I understand what happened. I don't know. All I'm saying is his leadership doesn't start and stop with just him and his own teammates.
Right.
He was imparting wisdom to other players on both sides of the ice. And I thought that was interesting because it seemed respectful, right? It wasn't, it didn't look like some chippy thing. It actually seemed like he was genuinely, he had something of worth to say to him in that moment.
Well, and that's where I think, you know, I tweeted about it, but I went back through and watched the video of him being introduced on Friday night again. All of the Henderson players are standing, not just the one, obviously the ones on the ice were standing, but all the players are standing on the bench and everyone's tapping their stick. And, you know, Jared Bednar told us in California, he goes, I don't think every player gets stick taps from the other team when they're announced. And, you know, he was making the point of like a lot of players come back from injury and persevere. There's a lot of respect for Gabe Landeskog, not just in the NHL, but around hockey. And that story, it's a great story. That's probably one of those moments where it's like, hey, I'm on the other team right now, but I don't know, maybe keep your mouth shut. You got him in the head. There's not much that you're going to do. You know, and I don't know if that's what was
more
said,
articulately,
but, like,
but I think probably sympathizing and relating with him, but also giving the mature perspective of, hey, you can't be doing that.
Don't argue anymore because they're just going to think that you did it intentionally, and they're going to be they're going to be after you next time. Just go, or you know.
Yeah.
We are completely speculating on the substance of that conversation, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was something like that.
It was purely respectful between the two. For sure. I can at least say that much. And it's bigger, you know, it's like you said, players talking to him throughout the course of the game, maybe at the faceoff dot, and just saying, welcome back. And Landeskog talked in the post game about how much that meant to him. There's tremendous respect and reverence for Landeskog. And that was just another little small detail of the weekend that maybe doesn't end up on a score sheet, but is significant about Landeskog's impact on the sport.
Yeah, it's look, we hear so much about him and his leadership style and the way that players feel about him. And, you know, we've even heard from other players before this season about how highly they think of Gabe Landeskog as he's gone through this whole journey, and they just want to see him back. And then we've talked to players in the Avs locker room in the past week who are new to the Avs, who have never played with him, saying, you know, yeah, you don't hear anything but good things, even just him being around. Like, it's fun to have him around and just talk to him, and it makes you excited about what it could be when he gets back. And you know, all of those things just tells you who he is as a person, as a player, as a presence in that locker room. I think, when is the regular season done for the leagues? At Thursday?
For AHL?
No, for the NHL.
I'm not certain.
I believe it's Thursday. I think those are in the last game. So the Avs can't activate him until Friday at the earliest. So, you know, we won't know until then. But I just can't even imagine what it's going to do for this group. I mean, I talked to TJ Tynan on Friday, and like he said, what Gabe has done for this group and what we've been able to do for, you know, having him here and the boost he's given us. And like, he goes, tonight's a big night, but it's a bigger night for Gabe. Like, they were all feeding off of it. And none of those guys played with Gabe. I cannot even imagine the emotional boost that this organization is going to get if Gabe Landeskog is in the lineup on Saturday.
Yeah. And I do want to talk about the implications of that, there's one more thing I wanted to add about the game on Saturday that's of significance. And this is a shootout comeback win for the Eagles. So not only does Landeskog play in a back-to-back night, he plays more than regulation hockey, and he's out there in overtime, at least a handful of shifts, driving play and creating offensive opportunities. And so
Can I interrupt to ask a question? Did we get time on ice for Saturday?
I did not get time on ice.
Because the AHL does not officially track it.
No,
okay,
but
keep going. Sorry.
It's got to be north of 15 is my guess, because he plays the full extent of regulation, and it appears on track with what we saw Friday, if not maybe a little bit more. And then, of course, in overtime, he's being utilized. And I think what was significant, too, is his speed was a little bit of concern to me, not so much that I think it's something he can build back up to with time, but it's the part that is maybe a little bit lacking. His mobility was great. His starts, his stops in and out of battle, I loved it. I think that would maybe be the greater concern. The speed, I think, is something that will come. But that was a small concern along the weekend. But seeing him beat players up ice in overtime in kind of the more, man-on-man matchup in that setting gave me a lot of confidence that it's just a matter of time for Landeskog. I don't think, 3 years is a lot of time to miss. And so I was really worried about how long it would take for him to get up to game speed. But just seeing him endure for OT and then, take a shot in the shootout, it just gave me a lot more confidence than if it had just ended in regulation for the Eagles.
I wanted him to score on that shootout for him.
Me too. It was all so storybook scripted this whole weekend. That would have been maybe too perfect. But the sentiment of the players in the postgame was, I can't believe we did this. And that's where I want to throw a little bit of respect back to the Landeskog effect. Now, it's not him and him alone. There's a lot of belief in that Eagles locker room too, but his impact, it elevated alongside the rest of that belief a comeback that I don't know they were even confident of, because they were doing a lot of things right and just not able to break through Henderson playing a lot more aggressively in their own end. Their coverage was better the second night, and so it was more difficult to create chances, and so it was difficult for the Eagles to break through that. I think they'd reached a point late in the third where they didn't think it was possible, and that's the Landeskog effect, is he can impact games when nobody else can. It's very heroic how he can sort of elevate his team.
Yeah, there's a belief in the team that he's got that maybe isn't a natural belief. People go, he seems to have that extra level of no, you can do it.
Yeah.
From a player to player standpoint. It was closest, as close as storybook as you get all week, all weekend, Megan. I think for Gabe, those games went about as well as they could have. And now it just shifts to what happens next. When do we see him back? When do they activate him? Is he at that point? And it all just kind of becomes a waiting game here. The Avs had an optional practice today. He was there. He was working with Nathan McKinnon on what I would say is more details work, taking pucks off the wall and then making a pass, catching a pass in the neutral zone, sending hard passes from one side of the ice to the other. It's little stuff that Nathan McKinnon does. He'll usually grab a couple people, Jonathan Drouin, Marty Netchis. Earlier this season, it was Casey Middlestat. He'd grab some people and they just work on small little things. And Gabe Landeskog was in that today. And I think that those are the things that are going to be the most important. But my last thing on Gabe, whether it's game 1, game 2, game 3, round 2, whatever, I think people are going to be surprised at how quickly Gabe Landeskog is able to jump back into things, Megan. That was my biggest takeaway from this weekend. Was it took him 5 periods where he didn't contribute, and then after that it was pucks in the back of the net, picking up assists, going in the shootout, a factor in overtime. He caught back up pretty quick.
Yeah. And I think you could see the respect that Henderson had for him as a player when he'd assert himself at the net front. The goalie wouldn't challenge him a lot of the time. But by the end of the second night, I think that he was getting a little bit more realistic competition. But there was some maybe sensitivity around Landeskog in this weekend series that I think is going to be interesting in a Dallas series, for example, that the kid gloves might not be on for that, and I think it'll just ramp up, but Landeskog seemed ready to meet that challenge as his competition opposite him challenged him more.
Don't you feel a little bit like there was some of that? And I do think this would also be true. A little bit of like, ugh,
I don't want to be the one.
If I touch this guy, I'm probably getting 7 slashes on my way to the bench. Like I'm getting, 2 cross checks, 7 slashes, and someone's probably finishing me into the wall pretty hard if I'm taking and I think there might be a level of that too, even when this Star Series starts, where it's like, take an extra hard chop at him. I dare you. I'm not saying don't play him hard, but anyone who's going to do something stupid, I think is going to have like Eric Johnson's going to be on Gabe Landeskog patrol.
Landeskog took almost every shift with Devontae Stevens on the ice. And it's just one of those quiet deterrents. It wasn't like Stevens was out there acting as his bodyguard. It's just, I do think there will be some of that, whether it's, I don't think it'll be a Keaton Middleton. I think it'll be more realistically Eric Johnson. But I think everybody's going to want
Josh
to
Manson,
stand up for Landeskog on the ice. And there will be a price to pay, is as simple as I can make it.
And especially if he's out there with Charlie Coyle or OC or, some of these guys who are in the bottom part of the lineup who are not afraid to, mix things up.
Miles Wood.
Yeah. Miles Wood. All right. Well, Megan, a lot to continue to unpack this week with Gabe. I think it was a really great weekend up in Loveland, went about as well as he probably could have hoped. But let's shift our focus to, we have the matchup locked in officially. Colorado Avalanche and the Dallas Stars in round 1. Nathan MacKinnon versus Mikko Rantanen. Mackenzie Blackwood versus Jake Ottinger. This is going to be an interesting matchup for however long it goes. We get a rematch from last year. Avs get a chance at a little bit of revenge here with the big storyline out of Dallas being Miro Heiskanen will not be ready for game 1 and more than likely will not be ready for the first round series at all. Although, as we all predicted in the media room last week, it has already started with Pete DeBoer and the Dallas Stars. Oh, well, maybe Miro could be back. I imagine that we'll get this. If this series goes 7 games, we will get maybe Miro could play for 7 games and then he won't play. But that is the big storyline coming out of Dallas. Broad strokes, we're gonna be deep diving into this all week. But how you feel about this matchup? Avs going on the road in round 1 to take on the Dallas Stars.
I feel differently about the Heiskanen injury update. I do think them walking it back to, well, it's just not game 1, but he might appear in the series. I would be then sort of waiting cautiously for the possibility of his return, I don't know, in a game 3, in a game 4 type situation.
You think that quick, huh?
Yeah, I do, because of the stakes, honestly. And I look at how Dallas has closed out the season, and their greatest weakness right now is their back end. And I think even fully complete, because they've been resting some guys here near the end, but I think even complete, that's the area I'm worried the most. Like without Lindell and Harley kind of over this last stretch, I do think it's exposed how much of their offense runs through their back end, not so differently from the Avs, but this is a team that has closed out the year and they're just not getting pucks on net the way that they used to. And Jared Bednar kind of addressed this today, that he felt it was a result of their place in the standings and just sort of coasting into the postseason. I don't doubt that's true. I do think this team still poses an offensive threat, but I think Heiskanen is such a part of their life force that is too important. And depending on how this series starts, right? Like you're looking at an Avs lineup that's expected to be close to fully healthy, with the possibility of Landeskog being able to draw in just as an option, which is incredible. And even Cale Makar remarked it, how they haven't really been in this position yet this season where they've been this close to full health, expected game 1. And so I think on the Dallas side, that's where I could see Heiskanen, there's maybe a little bit of a push to get him in. And it's just because when I asked Jared Bednar about the similarities and differences of the Dallas team they're getting in round 1 versus last year in round 2, it is Chris Tanev, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I look at how he shut down Colorado almost single-handedly, suffocating their ability to create offensively. And we all know where the Avs were shorthanded on their side of things and how that was just debilitating for their morale to lose Val Nichushkin. But I think that Tanev's impact defensively
I think
is
he's being way undersold.
going to be an intriguing part of this matchup that I think they're going to try to bolster their back end as much as they can, because their depth, especially within their forward group, is great. That was what Jared Bednar talked about. Their depth was great last year, and it's still great this year. Lines 1 through 4 are intriguing. I think line 1, Avs have them beat. I think they have more top-end talent with a little bit more experience. But if you go third line by third line, Dallas mixes up their top 9 so much that I'm not even certain what the third line is,
Yeah.
but I do feel like it might fare a little bit better than the current iteration of the Avs third line, in part because we haven't seen it fully realized yet. So not so different from Colton, Kiviranta, and Wood in the Winnipeg series, discovering this kind of newfound magic within that line. I'm expecting a similar boost from Charlie Coyle and his line, but I still think the overall depth on Dallas's forward side is so strong, it'll be challenging for the Avs, but they're better equipped for it now than they were last year. And so a lot of the guys around the room feel Avs are Avs. Dallas is good in every area. I have question marks. I still think they're good in every area, but I don't know if they're better. And that's what I have the biggest question mark around for the top of the lineup, the top guys. I think the offensive threats will always be there, and the Avs shouldn't underestimate it. I think sometimes they lose Duchesne on the ice and commit to the strong side of the puck too much, and that's where a Robertson or a Duchesne sneaks in behind them. And so I don't want to get too into the strategy just yet, because I feel like we're going to get to that point, but that'll be the curiosity then, is the overall depth I think is more competitive now than before for both teams. Defensively, I think the Avs will have them beat, especially with the concern to Heiskanen. And then finally, the goaltending. It's a question mark on both sides for me, personally. Blackwood's untested. He's started the most games of his career this season. I think that his body maybe was a little bit worn down at the end. And so I don't think we've seen the best version of Mackenzie Blackwood here in this final stretch. I'm not going to hold that against him. I just want to see what Mackenzie Blackwood in playoff mode is made of.
So, all right, I'm going to go all the way back to where you started there. I think I'll even make you a friendly bet that Heiskanen does not play in this series. He had knee surgery back in February. I just don't know what knee surgery allows you back into the game 6 weeks later.
Didn't Landy have a procedure just before 2022? And he missed.
He had a cleanup. Okay. He didn't have, like, Heiskanen tore something. I just don't. I think this is all because I agree so wholeheartedly with what you're talking about with Tanev. And that was eventually where I wanted to get with this defense conversation. I think Dallas up front maybe does not get enough conversation about how deep they are. Jared Bednar and the point that you were just making, Cedric said their first line is almost indistinguishable from their third line, depending on the night. They've got a lot of forward depth
because it's so strong.
Correct.
Yes.
No. Yeah. And I'm saying that in a positive manner of there's some nights where it's I don't know, is this their first line or is the line that's listed as third on their depth chart their first line? It's that deep. I don't think enough talk is being given to the point that you brought up there, Megan. Brandon Tanev made a massive difference in this series last year. Massive. And Chris, thank you.
Did you see my panic?
I did.
Okay.
And that was what led me to, I was like, wait a minute, I must have gotten it wrong. Chris Tanev made a massive difference in this series last year, being able to play next to Miro Heiskanen. And not only giving Heiskanen someone who's smart, responsible defensively, giving him that freedom to get up the ice and go as well as Heiskanen does, he was a legitimate shutdown player for the Avs top guys. You don't have a version of that this year. Thomas Harley's a really good defenseman. If Esa Lindell also you expect to be back in that lineup. I just look at this core of defensemen for the Dallas Stars, and even with Heiskanen back, in my opinion, it would be a rush back thing. I think where we'll really start to hear conversation talk up of Heiskanen coming back is if Dallas starts to fall behind in this series. I just don't think that I mean, he's not even skating with the team yet. I just don't think he's going to be ready to jump into what they would need out of him by next week. And I just think that if I'm the Avs, that's where I'm really looking like I'm going to try to expose this group is we think that our D-core is leaps and bounds ahead of where theirs is at. I think it's going to be a really interesting chess match up front, but I do not think there's been enough conversation about this D-core is set up for Dallas in a worse position than they were last year to take on the Colorado Avalanche. And I think that's something that the Avs are going to be really keying in on this year because they're solid up front. They are rock solid up front.
Yeah, I look at the Avs loading up on depth as intentional
100%.
to compete with that kind of depth up front. And this is where I think Colorado didn't just stop with that depth, though, and bringing in Lindgren helped to bolster their back end
Yep.
in a way we have appreciated from the jump, but I think will become more fruitful for the Avs, in part because health is still a question. You know, Josh Manson, he's missed some time.
Yep.
And so it'll be interesting to see what shape he's really in. And they have options, thankfully, too, with a player like Malinsky sort of elevating his game as of late and being pretty compatible with anyone you put him with, right? He's great with Gerard, great with Lindgren.
No way Sam's not in this top 6, right? To start the playoffs. That would be insane if he wasn't.
At this point, I think he's in a different place from even where Byram was going into the 2022 playoffs because Byram dealt with so much with injuries. He was unproven in a lot of ways, despite us knowing what that projected ceiling kind of looked like for him. I think Malinsky has done himself a lot of favors with the runway this year and working some things out of his game, coming out of the Four Nations break in particular. There's a consistency and a trust that he's built that I think easily puts him in
at least game 1.
Yeah, in the full-fledged lineup, like solidly there.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I just wanted to make sure that we were on the same page because I really am. I'm looking at
absolutely.
Even assuming health, I think he's in that 6.
No, I think so too. And in looking at the depth on the forward side of things, I don't think we've seen what the Charlie Coyle line is fully capable of just yet. I think he's just beginning to heat up. I also agree with Bednar in his assessment that from the jump, he's been doing things well here. The production maybe didn't shine through in his game, but what he brings in his two-way game, I think has helped the overall possession for that line. And that's where I think a player like Miles Wood is having a little bit more success here, is he's playing alongside someone who's really competitive and really responsible. And I think it's enforcing good habits for Miles Wood too, who can then leverage the things that have made him dangerous in the past in an effective way, which is his speed. And I think there's a little more skill there than we've seen come through this season, but it's starting to show a little bit more because his game is so complementary to Charlie Coyle's.
Well, and I give him credit, Miles Wood, because you can definitely tell that he has picked up on the fact that there's spots up for grabs here going into the playoffs. And if you want one, we got to see better than what we've seen. And I think he's done that. And not to mention, I don't know, Gabe Landeskog would also probably look pretty good next to Charlie Coyle on that third line. And that would also change the dynamic of that group a bit.
It would. It is interesting too, because the other wing spot has been the one that has rotated a little bit, whether it's VC or Kiviranta. And obviously playoff Kivi, I don't want to understate what he's capable of either and just immediately yeet him from the lineup. But I love that we're in that place, because when I look at the side-by-side, I'm just kind of imagining Mason Marchment on Dallas's third line. Not set in stone, just sort of where I imagine him, kind of with like a Matt Duchene and Granlund. And again, not locking that in officially, but Duchene to Coyle, really intriguing matchup, right? Kind of different players, but I really love the size and reach of Coyle, and I have him maybe winning some of those battles a little bit more because of that. But I think what Marchment does is similar to what Miles Wood does, but better. And so it's going to really challenge Miles Wood to be the best version of himself, because I think they're a similar player in terms of being a nuisance to play against. And so a Landeskog could be a secret weapon to sort of take that line up a notch and be even more competitive if that is Dallas's projected third line.
Well, so let me ask you this. Let's just say, Jared Bednar said that they're hoping that everyone's healthy. Miles Wood in the lineup?
I don't know.
Mm-hmm. And I don't either. I honestly don't know.
Because here's what's tough. Jolki Viranta, for example. I loved what he did for the Avs in the Winnipeg series last year. But even the way Jared Bednar has talked about him, he sort of used the words, well, it's nothing special, in that he's just so versatile and complementary to anybody that he plays with. It's not that he's doing any one thing special in particular. He's just super complimentary. That's not a strong case to me. Like, I want a guy who's got a skill set that's sort of this strength that sets him apart from the others. So for Miles Wood, it is his speed. And I think that can drive play up ice and transition and beat Dallas or other teams in a way that maybe Jolki Viranta can't. And that's where I'm giving him a little bit of an edge, but I'm counting on the best version of Miles Wood in that scenario too.
Right. Which, we saw he had an overtime winner in the series last year in Dallas. Was that game 1? Game 2? Doesn't matter. Scored an overtime winner in Dallas last year in the playoffs. So it's in there. But look, the Avs are in a spot similar to where they were in 2022, where you've got legitimate NHL regulars that are going to be sitting out in game 1 of the playoffs, especially if Gabe Landeskog is back. And I think, like you said, Megan, I think this was part of the plan all along. We remember in 2022 how losing to Vegas shaped the identity of the team the next year. I think the loss to Dallas last year has had a similar effect in how management has handled it, how the team is approaching things we don't want to go through that again. That sucked. And, hopefully having Val Nichushkin will make a difference on all that too. This group, I really do feel like has the potential to do something special. I told Evan when he and I were walking back from dinner on Friday in California, I said, my bones tell me that this is a long playoff run that we're about to start here, man. And he said, me too. I feel the same way. But they got to find the right way to put it together here early, because there is a real world that plays out where this matchup is their toughest matchup in terms of the way that how the rosters actually stack up with depth and all that stuff. But I think management went out and built this Avalanche team specifically to get out of this series. Now, I don't think they were anticipating Mikko Rantanen being on the other side of it when they made all the moves they did. But I do think that this has been set up very intentionally for the Avs to play this Dallas Stars team. Let's talk about the net minding. You mentioned Mackenzie Blackwood has struggled a bit here. Struggled even seems dramatic.
It really does. I want to make that clear.
Yeah. And I'm saying that for me, not even for you.
Because I agree. He has struggled a little bit here, but we're still not talking about bad goaltending.
No. We're talking about struggling relative to what he had done earlier in the season. We do have a super chat in here, by the way. Vaguely sober. Jesse gets an earthquake. Megan gets hearing damage from the goal. There we go. There's the lighting. From the goal in Loveland, we got Cat back, and Gorilla Sports is about to tick over 7K YouTube subs. If you haven't subbed already, head on over to the Gorilla Sports YouTube channel. Click that button, hit the bell so you get notified every time we're live. We have so much content coming your guys' way starting this week through the rest of the playoffs. Make sure you guys are dialed in. Big shout out to our guy, Vaguely. But yes, Megan, back to the goaltending here, and I'm just pulling this up. Okay, he did fall out of the top 5. Because maybe it's for save percentage. I just got to find it. Mackenzie Blackwood has had a very good season for the Avalanche. Stumbled a little bit here. I'm going to use that word instead of struggled. He's stumbled a bit here down the stretch. I think you're going to get a good week off here. I think that's going to be good for him. So he's 8th in the NHL in save percentage now at the end of the season. I think it's going to be a good week off for Mackenzie Blackwood. I think he's going to be able to come back refreshed. And I think you have full confidence in him. And if you don't, well, this is why you went out and also brought in Scott Wedgwood to kind of try to mirror the type of tandem that you had 3 years ago.
Yeah, I think that Mackenzie Blackwood has played the most hockey in his career this season. The most NHL starts.
56 games.
That's going to be tough on the body to make that transition. And the other thing is he's consistently played well. You know, the goal saved above expected, typically a positive number game by game. And it's still among the top in the league, even to conclude the season in totality. Interestingly enough, where I think his game has struggled a little bit as of late can be also supported by his teammates. And on the whole, the goaltending for the Avs is the third highest percentage of goals against from rebounds. And I think his rebound control has been what has been a struggle for him a little bit lately. I think that the Avs have done better in their own end at the end of the season. I think they've buttoned a lot up defensively. And so if there's a strong emphasis on protecting the house and clearing pucks, punishing players who decide to be there, and eliminating second and third attempts in their own end, which I think back to the Mikko Rantanen return game and how that game ended. Obviously, Dallas made a comeback late in that game. That part stinks. But in talking to Maverick Bork at the end of that game, he talked about how difficult it was for them to create chances in Colorado's end because of how aggressive they were in their coverage. If the Avs can sort of replicate that kind of D-zone coverage, and honestly, it starts between the blue lines, it will better support Mackenzie Blackwood.
Mhm.
And I think they're fully capable of it because those numbers have only improved throughout the course of the year. And within a 7-game series, I think that they can take the time then to mind their P's and Q's. I don't know if that's the expression, but you know what I mean.
Going with it.
It's attention to detail, right? That can be where they put a really strong attention to detail. It will help support Mackenzie Blackwood, who I really don't have a lack of confidence in. But maybe, all right, this is an area of his game that feels like it stumbled a little bit. Let's pick him up. Let's just defend the house better.
Where the Avs definitely have the advantage in this series is up front with the high-end star power. But I really do think that in years past, we would say, okay, well, that's where the Avs have the clear advantage, even with Mikko Rantanen being with Dallas. But Dallas has a clear advantage in net. I don't know if that's quite so clear cut this time around.
I agree.
I think very highly of Jake Ottinger, but postseason Jake Ottinger has been a bit of a ride the last few years. And if Mackenzie Blackwood can just find a level of consistency, that's what I felt like Darcy Kemper gave you a couple years ago. Was he perfect every night? No. Could he see for half the playoffs?
Also,
not
no.
really. He gave you a chance every night. And if that's what Mackenzie Blackwood could do, I think the Avs are going to find a lot of success. Because I don't think that it's all right, well, the Stars clearly have the advantage in net. I don't think it's like that this year.
I don't either. Even with Mackenzie Blackwood kind of, stumbling just a tiny bit here in the end, the strength of Scott Wedgwood's play behind him also gives me a lot of confidence in the options for goaltending. But ultimately, I think it's something the Avs, if they lock it down in their own end, the way that we've even seen like a Nathan McKinnon in playoff form dig in even deeper in his own end doing those blue-collar things, I think the Avs will be better defensively than maybe we've seen them in the playoffs to date.
Yeah, I'm with you. I also think this is a group that's just, I don't want to say they're on a mission because every team wants to win. There does seem to be an extra level of motivation for this group. I do think losing the way that they did last year really stung. And I do think that there is a sense of let's not waste this opportunity that we have here. And I think it's going to be a motivated group. I really do. And I'm looking forward to seeing what the rest of this week brings. And then I'm looking forward to seeing what Saturday brings. We got a few people in the chat ask, no, we have not seen an official schedule come out yet, but we can report at least what we have been told. Right now, I am hearing that the Avs are expected to start on Saturday in Dallas. And then it beyond that, it actually sounds like, and Megan, I'm knocking on a lot of wood here because I'm hoping for what I'm about to say, but we know how this goes. It sounds like the Avs will be the early game on Saturday. Not necessarily like noon or 1, but talking maybe 4 p.m. Mountain, be the first of the doubleheader for TNT, as where the Avs are usually the second. There's a chance that it sounds like it'll be a couple of Western Conference matchups on Saturday, with the second one being a Pacific time zone matchup. So there's a chance that not only do the Avs start Saturday, but they actually get the reasonable start time, as where Mountain time zone usually ends up with a bunch of 8 p.m. puck drops in Denver. So that would definitely be nice if the Avs could get the earlier start on Saturday.
It would be nice for us.
Right. Selfishly, it'd be really nice. For the Avs, I don't think they really care, but selfishly, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I think Jared Bednar said today it's kind of the perfect scenario in terms of them getting this break ahead of game 1. And I would feel similarly then that they're going to be so rested and well practiced by that point that I think they'd be happy with that start time.
They are the first team in the league to wrap up the regular season. If you go look right now, there are 31 NHL teams with games to play. The Avs are the only ones at 32. I just always wonder how things work out that way. Last thing I want to talk about, Megan, on our first initial preview show, I actually think I'm going to have a couple special guests stopping here tomorrow. Megan will be out of office, getting one last breather in before it's just crazy, which we don't need to get into all that.
I'm going to be holding my breath.
I know. But point being, we're going to have a lot of content coming your guys' way all week. Megan and Chloe will be doing playoff preview stuff on Pucks and Prosecco. And then we will put a little bit of a bow on the season at some point this week. Real ones know probably what I'm talking about, of how we'll wrap up the season. But we're going to be doing a lot of preview stuff all week to wrap up our kind of broad strokes preview here, Megan. I do want to talk about the top end talent, because that is one area in this series where I think you can pretty definitively say the Avs are going to have the advantage. Nathan MacKinnon, Cale Makar. Those are just higher end players than what they've got with Dallas. Dallas has really, in the past, kind of taken the depth approach to this lineup when playing against the Avs. But in a year where the Avs are hopefully, from their perspective, going to be able to match that depth, how big of a factor do you put, or how much weight do you put in the top guys being able to factor in, be the difference makers? Or do you take a larger step back of this series and say Dallas is deep enough, they're not going to be able to do it with just the top end guys?
Yeah, I think Colorado's strength of talent at the top is the biggest deal. It's why losing Val Nichushkin is really debilitating for the Avs. He's an important part of their top 6 for a reason. I think, too, we talked about this with respect to the comparisons of the 2022 team to now, but I think this year's version of Nathan MacKinnon, I don't know if I'll go as far to say is better than last year's, because last year's was actually also insane.
Yeah.
But the combination of this year's Cale Makar, this year's MacKinnon, and I'm going to throw in some of the new guys, but also Arturi Lehkonen, who has a new career high in goals this season, kind of quietly. I do expect big things then from the top of the Avs lineup. And that's where they need to be most competitive, because there isn't a Tanev to shut down Nathan MacKinnon single-handedly in this series. It's going to be a couple of threats from a few different directions now, with a Brock Nelson in the mix and Jonathan Drouin, who also missed time. He had that weird skate cut injury throughout the playoffs last year. And so having a Val Nichushkin in the mix, having a Jonathan Drouin in the mix, alongside the years that Nathan MacKinnon, Cale Makar are having, I think is the secret weapon for the Avs that's not so secret. And it just needs to execute. It needs to show up. And that's where the Val Nichushkin part is hard, because I think those other guys do. They do show up, and it's why Taves being out of the lineup also had an impact in the Dallas series. And so because we're looking at this unique situation of full health, put an asterisk by that,
right?
That's pretty scary for the Avs to be going into game 1 that way.
Last thing we're going to do in terms of previewing the show is we're going to give our X factors. I'm going to give you a moment to think about it, because Megan, we got a new partner alert here. New partner on the pod. I'd like to welcome Accurate America to Guerrilla Sports Off Ice. I want to tell you guys all about our great friends over at Accurate America Roofing. You never know when and where the hail will hit when the summer storms roll around. And the last thing you want is to be caught scrambling when it does, battling your neighbors for an appointment or being left with no other option than one of those storm-chasing roofers that come to town. Make sure you call before the storm and call Accurate America at 303-900-ROOF. Again, that's 303-900-ROOF. They'll partner with you on navigating insurance. They'll provide quick, professional, and knowledgeable service using the latest technology and 3D modeling. And their work is guaranteed as long as you own your home. As long as you own your home. Just wanted to make sure you all heard that. They are guaranteeing it as long as you're in the house. Don't scramble at the last minute. Call Accurate America at 303-900-ROOF before the storm. That's Accurate America, experts in roofing and exteriors. Happy to have Accurate America on board with us here at Gorilla Sports, and only more better things to come. Megan, let's talk X Factors here for this series with the Avs. Do you want to give an Avs X Factor? You know what? Let's just do Avs X Factors, and we'll give Chloe who our X Factors are for the entire series. We'll have that graphic going out. Do you have yours ready? Do you know who your X Factor is for the Avs?
I got confused by the last part. What am I allowed to say right now?
Avs X Factor.
Okay.
Ignore everything that I said. Everything that came out of my mouth after the read directed towards you, you could just strike from the record. I don't even know why I said it.
Great. I'm ready to give you my Dallas X Factor.
Oh, perfect.
I'm just kidding. All right. For Colorado, I have a feeling he's going to be the X Factor in a lot of series. So I almost don't want to give him away right now because I'm expecting him to do big things. But it's Charlie Coyle.
Ooh,
and
right.
It maybe feels like an obvious choice for an X Factor, but it's because he does so many things well and he's such a competitor. I look at Ross Colton, for example, and how he takes his game up a notch in the playoffs from what you see in the regular season. And I'm expecting a similar effect from Charlie Coyle. And I think his experience is going to be invaluable, especially, deeper in the Avs lineup. To have that experience represented there, I think is going to shine through Coyle, whose game productively has stepped up over this last stretch. And I think it's because he's settling into the way that the Avs like to play and making it his own.
I think that's a great pick for an X Factor. He was one of the names that came through my head. But Megan, I think what's fun about the Avs group this year is I think there's a lot of guys that you could pick.
Yeah.
Neither of us are picking Gabe Landeskog because obviously that's like the ultimate, if he comes back, that changed everything. I'm going to take the other piece of low-hanging fruit. It's Val Nichushkin. For the record, I like your answer better because I think there's a lot of dynamics to why Charlie Coyle is going to be an X factor for the entire playoff run. So I love that answer. Mine is the simple answer of you just talked about how important Val Nichushkin is to this team. You could make a real argument that he's the third best player on this team when he's really going. You need him. You need him in the lineup. And assuming he doesn't get injured, you need him in the lineup. He needs to keep himself in the lineup. With Val Nichushkin, this is a different team. And I think if they have him, not only do I think they could go deep, I think they got to be the favorites to go deep if you've got Val Nichushkin healthy in your lineup. So he is my X factor. He's got to stay in the lineup. This is a different team with him.
Yeah. In the same way that this is also a team without Mikko Rantanen, who is a regular playoff performer for the Avs. And sometimes his contributions feel tertiary, but he was still a part of the bottom line of making plays. And that's where Val Nichushkin, then his importance is only amplified in the absence of a Rantanen. And similarly, a Martin Necas, whose playoff performance has not matched his regular season production. And Jared Bednar addressed it this morning that the things that serve him well in the regular season also serve him well in the postseason. And it's just a matter of him continuing to bring those things and not straying from those. And I think it's true. Like, that can be another aspect of the X factor for the Avs, is just the top six in general being intact, because that's where Coyle, because I talked about Dallas's depth, especially lines 1 through 3, that's where Coyle keeps them competitive deeper into their lineup than they were a year ago. And it starts with them being complete at the top, and Vanichushkin is a huge part of that.
Huge part of it. It's going to be interesting. We are going to have our X Factor graphic going out. Is that what I think it is there, Chloe? We got another super chat from Bagley again. New partner needs to check Blue Arena roof stat. Yeah, I thought it was going to blow off this weekend.
I was so proud because the decibel reader in Winnipeg, which is one of the loudest stadiums I've been in, I don't remember exactly how high it got up to, but it was probably around 113. It got to about 109 in Blue Arena. And keep in mind, the capacity there is it's like 7,000.
Oh, is it even that big? I thought it was even smaller than that.
It's like 6,000 something seating, and then there's some suites that also add to the overall total. And so I was just really impressed by how loud Blue Arena got this weekend.
It was awesome. I just really briefly with Gabe just chatted about the building. And yeah, it was awesome. It was awesome to be up there this weekend. Do you want to remind you guys, we sent the post out last week. We'll be promoting it more this week as it becomes available for you to fill out your brackets. But we actually do have a Guerrilla Sports NHL bracket challenge going on, at NHL.com. We've got the league and password posted. We'll repost that today. I'll go in and actually do it right now. So you guys can find it at the top of my page on X. But we'll be pushing that a little bit more here as we get further into the week. More matchups get dialed and you can actually start filling out your bracket. But we will have a couple of fun giveaways for the winners, including some Guerrilla Sports merch and maybe some gift cards as well. But yeah, go get entered into the bracket challenge. You can't create your bracket yet because there's only 2 matchups set, or is it just the Avs and Stars? Are there any others locked in?
Not sure.
Either way, there's not a lot locked in, but I am retweeting it right now so that you can go get added to that and win some cool prizes at the end of it all if your bracket comes out on top. Megan, what else you got for us today on this Tuesday afternoon?
Did I hear you say one of the prizes could be merch?
I think you did hear that right, Megan.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Who knew?
Who knew? Separately, I prepared a lot of fancy stats for the season preview. Obviously, we're not going to get into today, but I still want to talk about these things.
Oh, yes.
And it's about the way these teams play and how the Avs can match things that Dallas does well, counter things that Dallas does well. So I just want to make sure we get to that too.
Absolutely. So just to take you guys, I'll give you a little bit of a snapshot of what the rest of our week is going to look like here. We're pulling together a bonus episode. I'm hoping for tomorrow. We'll have a Pucks and Prosecco episode, then another episode of Guerrilla Sports Off Ice to round out the week. Then before every playoff game on this run for the Avs, Megan and I will be live for about 30 minutes. Look for those to go live about 2 hours before puck drop. We'll do that, then head on over to the arena, and then you will be getting us live immediately after every game in the playoffs. We'll go to availability. We'll talk to guys in the locker room. We'll talk to Jared Bednar, and then we will be live bringing you guys everything, sights, sounds, what we saw, what we heard, results, analysis, all of it, plus a lot more in-game content that we are just really excited about. But you guys are going to be hearing a lot from us over the next few days as we lead up to the open of round 1. We will make sure to do an entire pod, center the entire pod around exactly what you've got there, Megan. So we'll make sure to get into all of that. And then we'll be previewing on day of, once we have a better idea of lineups, breaking things down after game 1, before and after game 2. Megan and I will both be in Dallas, so we're going to have the full crew going, bringing you guys every inch of coverage from this series that you need. Megan, what else you got for today?
My X Factor for Dallas. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, okay.
I'm just kidding. We're going to save it.
We're going to save it. Keep an eye out for that. Chloe and Mark back there behind the glass today, bringing you guys this show. Big shout out to them. That's going to do it. She's Megan. I'm Jesse. Thanks so much, guys. We'll be back at it. Plenty more content this week. It's playoffs. Best time of year. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you later.